Welcome back, folks. This is the Way Out Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sharits, and we are in studio today with Detective Velek from the Juvenile Intervention Team. Before we took a break, I was putting out some information if somebody needs to contact the Sheriff's Department specifically for a educational presentation.
Yes.
They just call and ask for the J team.
Yeah, just call the 661-255-1121. Ask to speak to the J team, and it'll come to one of our desks. There's 4 of us back there. One of us will get it and get back to you as what our availability is and when we can do something, which we're pretty available all the time.
Okay. What if somebody notices some shifty behavior going on in their neighborhood that might look like, I don't know, drug dealing or drug use or whatever?
If they think something's going on, going through LA Crime Stoppers is the best way, because that way they're typing in if they get on the website at LACrimestoppers.org.
Correct? We have our guy over there. LACrimestoppers.org.
And then they can type in their response. I personally like it better on those when they type in their stuff, because the information's coming directly from them to me in their words, rather than them calling it and someone else typing it in and it getting forwarded, because sometimes you lose a little bit in translation. So if they type it in, for whatever the crime that they think they're seeing, what's going on, they send it in, we get it. With one thing, that is for non-emergent stuff. Those things, sometimes we don't see them for a day or two, or sometimes more, depending on what's going on. It is a web-based thing. We just get it in our email. If it's something emergent, something that's happening now, you still need to call the station or 911 for calls for service. Yeah,
very important that you understand that. I want to clarify that again. If it is an emergency that you're seeing, call 911.
Yes.
Call the Sheriff's Department. Call your local emergency response teams. Don't take the time to go on the website and type it in while there's an emergency happening. However, it is, I think it's great that there's a website, because if I'm calling in or I'm going to the website, I can take my time and really describe what's going on, think about it, because if I'm making the call, there's a lot of emotion involved in crimes inside. I want to get the right information.
And all the stuff at LA Crime Stoppers is all anonymous.
Okay.
Even when I get it, I don't know who sent it to me. So it's all through LA Crime Stoppers or through the Crime Stoppers, which is a national organization. We don't have the information of who sent us the tip.
Right.
So that way, people that want to remain anonymous and don't want to really get involved, they have that opportunity. If they do want to get involved, they can definitely leave their phone number or a contact for us to get back in contact with them if they want us to get back with them and do the follow-up and ask questions.
But there's always a response to those inquiries on that website?
We follow up on all of them, and all of them are cleared at some point. Sometimes, unfortunately, they do clear with we couldn't find it, because sometimes the data that we're given is just, and just an example, they had 2 dark cars and 2 young people made an exchange, and they just give me a street, and I'm like, right. Okay. Yeah. Really not a lot to go on. We'll still go by and we'll look and see if there's something there. But if there's not a lot of information, there's not a lot we can do with it. The more information, the more narrowed down and specific it is. License plates, good descriptions, names of people if we have them, specific times of day or night that something's happening. If it's
is it a recurring event that's going on, or is it a one-time deal?
Does it happen every day after school, at a certain park? Good information for us to have so we can get out there and actually work with the information.
Okay. So if a parent comes across something that they don't know what it is or something funny, same call to get a hold of the J team?
Yeah, we'll have parents that'll call us and want us to come. Usually we'll have them come to the station and meet us with whatever paraphernalia or item that they may have found. We get that quite a bit, where parents just don't know what it is they're looking at, and they'll bring it in. We're happy to look at it. If the J team's not there, there's usually other deputies that are around the station that are happy to help you with it and help you figure out what it is you have. Okay. Especially if sometimes we'll just recognize it right off. We know exactly what it is. Sometimes I've had stuff brought in that I don't know what it is, and it wasn't drug related, or it's just trends that teenagers have. But we can work with our SROs, our school resource officers, oftentimes know what these different things are if we don't, or if the standard deputy doesn't. We have a lot of people to help figure it out sometimes.
Well, so I have kids, but because of my history, like, I'm going to continue to be always on watch, only just because I see it all the time and I'm aware of it all the time and I'm having conversations all the time. But what if I am average Joe parent out there who doesn't know anything about it, and I have a 13-year-old? What's the best sort of suggestion you can give to a parent?
Just to continue being that involved parent. Our parents out here, we're involved so much with our kids when they're young. When they're 8, 9 years old, we're taking them to practices. We're being, youth sports coaches. We're doing all those kinds of things. And then when they get to junior high school and high school, we start letting them do stuff on their own.
Yeah.
And
well, it's coming from two sides. We let them do it on their own, and at that age, 12, 13, a natural thing is like they're breaking away from us. So there's a lot going on at that age.
So just keeping that contact. And even it's just keeping the daily contact. When the kids come home, when your child comes home, you have to have daily physical contact with your child. Right. And it's just very simple. Before they go to bed, when they come in at night, you just have that face-to-face, very intimate conversation. And you're going to notice changes. Whatever changes you notice in their physical appearance, whether it be weight gain, weight loss, change in style, the clothing that they're wearing, all those types of things you're going to notice. If there's a big shift from their norm, that's the time to question. What is it that I'm looking at? And whether you're questioning and you're calling us and asking us, hey, what does this mean? Or you're going to your place of worship and asking somebody at your church, is there something going on? Or if you take that person, your family to family counseling, you do something. If you're seeing that change, that's the time to question. That's the time to ask, what is it? And it may not be drugs. It just may be that they're into something different. They may have an eating disorder, or they may be succumbing to peer pressures and other things. But it's just being that involved parent. And if they're doing the drugs, we're probably going to find it.
Well, and it's a great opportunity anytime you see changes, if you're spending time with your kids. And I'll tell you, you can look up the studies, and it is a well-known fact that if you spend more time with your kids and spend more time as a family, that your family members, your kids are less likely to get into harmful behavior. So just spending time together is one of the best tips that any parent can utilize. But also, if you're noticing these things, and some of them are pretty obvious. If your kid comes home and they're wearing socks that have pot leaves on them, hello, right? Big red flag.
And a lot of times when I run into that, I ask the parents, well, who bought them?
Right. That's right.
Because a lot of times we do see that, and the parents go, well, I didn't see any harm in it. It's it's something that they bought at the store, they bought it online. We have to monitor their purchases. Right. What are they buying, and what message are they sending? And not just what message are they sending out to other people. What's changing in their attitudes, and what are their beliefs, so that we know where their mind is. Do they think that the marijuana is not harmful? With the passages of laws and legal marijuana coming, what message does that put in our kids' heads? Are they less afraid of it? They probably are. So we have to make sure that we educate them to what values are in our household.
Right. And it's a great opportunity. I mean, if you see something like that, it doesn't have to be, oh my God, and the end of the world. What a great opportunity for me to sit down with my teenager and investigate that stuff. Let's talk about it. Let's continue having those conversations on a regular basis. And when it comes to the difference between cannabis use and, say, alcohol use, right? If you think it's okay to buy your son, I don't know, pot leaf socks or something, ask yourself, would it be okay for me to buy him a t-shirt with a big bottle of whiskey on it and tell him to go to junior high school with that? Am I promoting that sort of thing? And when you put it in that context, people will usually go, oh, no, well, they're both legal.
Yeah.
Right? And what message am I sending to my child?
Yeah, exactly. That's why we need to think about what message we're sending to the kids, and how their mind is going to take it. They're not going to understand it the same way we are. I mean, we're much older than they are. That's why we're the parents, and we need to really monitor what it is they're doing and have the conversations. Like you say, it's a great opportunity to have that conversation with that child and with all the kids in the house. Just because one makes a mistake doesn't mean the others aren't going to make the mistake. We need to talk to all of them and include the whole family in it. And don't be embarrassed about it with other members of the family. Don't, oh, I can't let my brother know about this because his kids are all straight A students, so I don't want to let him know that my kid's messing up. No, have that conversation with the whole family. Everyone can be involved. Right. We shouldn't be embarrassed because our kids make a mistake. Our kids are going to make mistakes. Somewhere along the line, that's what they do. we're there to help them get through that mistake and show them that it's fixable. All these mistakes are all fixable.
Well, and I'm of the belief that it's never too young to start talking to your kids about drug use and about harmful behavior and things like that. Obviously, age appropriate. The conversation I'm having with a 5-year-old is going to be a lot different than the conversation that I'm having with a 15-year-old. However, I still need to be having that conversation with the 5-year-old and the 15-year-old.
And when you start young, it makes that conversation comfortable for the 15-year-old because he's had that conversation his whole life. The topic isn't a taboo topic that he just doesn't want to talk to mom and dad about. If it's open conversations, they're willing to have that conversation. That's what a lot of it just comes down to, is can that conversation be had openly and honestly with our kids.
Well, and when you said, talk to them about it, even if they've made mistakes, don't be afraid to talk about it, whether or not you're embarrassed by it. Something that kind of popped into my head was, what's obvious for me and maybe obvious for you, which might not be obvious to everybody else, is that as a parent, you are a model to your children. And what I want to say is that if you're sitting out there listening to this, or you hear it later or whatever, and you are participating in some behaviors that may not be a good model to your children, that it's okay for you to ask for help as well.
Oh, absolutely.
That as a parent who's caught up in drug use or alcohol use or anything that's harmful, who needs the help, it's okay to change at any time and become a new model, a healthier model to your children. So anybody who may be a parent that is caught up in stuff, ask for the help. Be a role model. And being a role model to get into recovery, or being a role model to make the change, is a huge, huge message that you're sending.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, we have run into that from time to time. I'm sure you've seen it too when you talk to some of these young drug users. And where did you learn to do this? And by watching mom and dad. Right. We do see that. It's out there. So we do have to be good role models to our kids, because they pick up all the good and the bad that we do. So, what are some of the oddest things that parents have brought you and said, "What is this?" Anything caught you off guard? Anything surprise you? The one that I was really surprised at was it was actually a hash press for making butane hash oil.
Okay.
But it was of a size that if it was actually in use, it was going to be a good dealer.
Right.
He was going to be able to be making quite the quantity of butane hash oil. And if he did it wrong, was probably going to cause some damage.
Blow up half the house, light it on fire.
Yeah. So, or at least injure himself a lot. And the parent didn't know what it was. They brought it in. They thought it was a toy of some sort. And after seeing it, I'm like, we have a serious problem at your house. We need to really go in and look. And the parents were open enough. We went back to their house and looked. And luckily, the young man had made the device but hadn't started using it yet. He learned about it on the internet, because we find anything on the internet, and just built this thing that was just way too big than anything he was ever going to do. He had no idea what it was he was building, I don't think, at least for the volume of it. When I looked at it, I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is just out of control.
Yeah, and some people think that marijuana or cannabis is completely harmless. And when you take a plant-like substance, or a plant, and you try to turn it into something that's much stronger, like an oil, there's a process that you have to go through that involves heat and flames and chemicals and different things, and this press that you're talking about, to try to turn your average cannabis into something that's much stronger.
Yes.
And so that's when it becomes one of the many ways that it can become very, very dangerous.
And luckily with this family, mom had just got into her son's room and was just going through his stuff. Just as I like, to see parents do, is search their stuff. If we go in and we look at our kids' stuff, their right to privacy, they do have some private time, but their stuff is subject to search, knowing what they have. Drugs and drug paraphernalia can be very small, so we need to look. And we need to look in those small places. And we need to have some skills on how we go about looking at things, whether it be in their bedroom, in their car, their book bags, those types of things. We need to know what it is they're getting into and what they have.
Yeah, certainly you can't do this every time, but there have been many, many, many instances when a parent they bring their teenager to me to drug test them or whatever, and as soon as the kid walks in, I don't even have to go any further because the pot that's out there today, I could smell it from 20 feet away. You're like, what is that funky smell? Well, I know what that funky smell is, but that's one of the ways that you can tell. If you're other than normal teenage odors that are going on inside of that room, if you walk into your kid's room and it smells like a skunk in there, you may have a big problem here. You want to start looking around, right?
But we also have with the concentrates that are out there today, the THC infused vapes, those types of things. The smell
Odorless,
isn't there.
Tasteless.
Yeah, the smell isn't necessarily there anymore, and that's a big change in the use of THC is with these things where it's become legal and there's things that are manufactured to not smell.
What do they call that? A G-pen?
Is that what
they call them G-pens, right? They call it a G-pen. So it's just like vape oil, but it has THC content in it.
And as the laws change and we have once we start having recreational marijuana stores, which we don't have yet, but with the passage of Prop 64.
64, correct.
They're going to be here. They're going to be showing up in communities throughout our state. So all those products are going to be around. So we need to educate ourselves as parents so we know what's there and look for these things. So the smell that has been our key for years and years and years, that portion's going to go away, I think. So I think we need to be ahead of the game and really know what these things are and know what to look for.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of different changes in the law, law enforcement and consequences of drug use from a legal perspective can be oftentimes very persuasive in getting somebody to the doors of treatment. It's always been like that. There have been, I know, many, many, many people, including myself, who would say that law enforcement played a big part in me changing my life today. If I hadn't have got busted that day, if I hadn't have been facing those consequences, I might not have been willing to find myself in that treatment center or make the changes that I was willing to make. And one of the myths that is out there in terms of recovery is, and you'll hear people say this a lot, is that you have to want it in order for it to work. And I want to sort of break that myth, at least from my own experiences. You have to be exposed to it in order for it to work. If law enforcement hadn't have been a factor in me being inside the room of a treatment center, I never would have been exposed to the recovery message. And hearing that message, then I started to want it. But I didn't go in wanting it. I didn't know what the heck I wanted, right? But so law enforcement is a really good tool, but a lot of that has been taken away. Proposition 47, for instance, right? Was that last year before?
That's been a few years now.
It's been a couple of years. So Prop 47 took felony drug possessions.
For personal use, it reduced some of it from felonies to misdemeanors.
Right.
Which it's still arrestable when law enforcement catches you on the street with meth or heroin or cocaine or all those same drugs. You still get arrested. What changed with it was the penalty that comes along with it. Felony, you were facing the possibility of much more time in jail than you do with a misdemeanor.
Right.
Although the jail time is still there, the system is set up with Prop 47 to encourage treatment. Which we still had some of the old propositions that had treatment programs in them in lieu of jail time. It's just expanded upon that. For some longtime users, they like it because they get out of jail quicker. Right. So it has made, for some of those folks, it has made things difficult. We still get the opportunity to expose them to treatment. It's just not forced as much as we used to be able to do.
Well, and from the user's side, a lot of the feedback that I've gotten since Prop 47 is like, oh, well, it's no big deal. I just got a ticket, or it's no big deal, or whatever. Where it used to be, oh heck, I'm facing all this time in prison. I better get my stuff together. And so it has changed. It has changed the face of willingness, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think it's changed some of the when we do stop someone. I do get more now. Do you have any drug? Yeah, I have some heroin right here, and they're not as afraid to hide it because they know that the jail time isn't going to be as long, if there is any at all. So they're not as afraid of it because they know that the lockup time is less.
Yeah, I think one of the most profound articles, I saw a very short thing, and it talked about a lady who who had an amount of heroin on her or something, and there was a line in this article that said the day before she would have been facing this amount of time, whatever it was, 10 years or something, and the very next day she gets written a ticket and gets let out, and it made the comparison of how much Prop 47 has changed in terms of penalties.
Yes, it changed it drastically.
Overnight. Well, and we have to be flexible with the times and be able to use what we have in order to motivate people to get into treatment and get the help they need.
It changed how we approach it a little bit, but we move along with it, and we still our focus on my team is the treatment side of it. And we would help someone navigate their criminal side of it. I've worked with defense attorneys to say, hey, let's get somebody into treatment before they ever go to court and do all these things, so that when you go to court, you can say, this is what I've done.
Right.
So that it's all the factors are satisfied before you ever see the judge. That is helpful when dealing with the criminal side of it. So we've helped with that, as long as they ask.
Right. Well, there's a lot of great tools out there, and we will talk more about the Sheriff's Department's role in helping people get into treatment when we come back after this. This is the Way Out Recovery Hour. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Way Out Recovery Hour. This is Bob Sharits. The Way Out Recovery Hour is brought to you by The Way Out. We are located at Plum and Bouquet Canyons in the Santa Clarita Valley. Our phone number is 661-296-4444, and our website is thewayoutrrecoveryscv.com. Visit us. One of the things that I always like to get out there on our show, and I don't think that I've mentioned this yet, if you or someone you love has a problem, you're listening right now or you're picking this up later, asking for help is the first step. Again, asking for help is the first step, and let's start to do that. Let's encourage people to get the help that they need. If you call us, we will make sure that you get either treatment with us or pointed in the right direction. So if not us, call somebody, call the Sheriff's Department. They'll point you in the right direction. Contact your school. If you have a teenager, contact your pastor, your therapist, your neighbor, your friend. But again, asking for help is the first step. And we want to encourage anybody to just start there. Start by asking for help and make a change in your life. So I'd like to thank Detective Velek for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me out here.
And, we got a couple of minutes to sort of wrap this up. If you have any words of wisdom or advice for any loved one who's sitting out there that can help their teenager or their young adult in getting the help they need, what would you say?
For families that are just beginning to get exposed to this, that really don't know where to go, if they ask for the help, I think the biggest piece is for them to educate themselves on what their family members are facing, what their kids are facing. If we can educate the parents and grandparents and the community at large about what our kids are facing, we're better prepared to steer them away from it, or at least give them good, honest information so that they can make educated decisions. I believe that if our kids are truly taught the dangers of drugs and alcohol, that they're going to stay away from it longer. If you're having those conversations all the time in your house, it should be a regular conversation. But if you're the parent of a 4th, 5th, 6th grader, perfect age. Find a place where you can get the education that you need so you can have those conversations, because that is right at the turning point. 4th, 5th, 6th grade. A couple of years from there, they're going to be exposed to drugs, if not already at 10 years old. If not already, they will be exposed to drugs. They will see it in their schools. They will see it in their community. And you need to have those conversations so that you can teach your kids what are they going to say when their friend has some right in front of them. Absolutely. And although they may be young themselves, sometimes they're exposed to older siblings, older cousins, their friends' older brothers and sisters. So they're exposed to those older teenagers on a regular basis. And that's where that first exposure comes from. So we need to have them prepared. We need to have all of our kids prepared and have a plan for what they're going to do when they're confronted with the situation. What's their decision going to be?
Right. Even practice that. Some of the when we get someone in treatment and they are concerned about running into their old friends that they used to use with, which is a really legitimate concern. It's one of the most difficult things. The primary age group that any treatment center, I think, works with in today's day and age is between the ages of about 17 and 25. That is going to be the biggest population in any treatment center because that's the most at-risk age group right there. And these guys, and it's a very social time in our lives. It's when we're making new friends. It's when we're starting to have long-term relationships. It's when we're graduating or getting into college and we're making plans for our future. So there's a lot of transition in there that includes a social aspect. And you get a person in treatment and they say, well, what am I supposed to say to my friends? We practice that with them. We sit down and go, okay, let's do a little role play. And parents, you can do that with your kids as well.
Absolutely. In order to do that, I think they need to get the education. So they need to do the research online, come out to one of the events that we're having, whether it's at their school, one of the city events, if they want to host one of their own at their church or with their homeowners association, wherever this event is, they need to get to them and don't go there with it's not going to happen in my house, or don't be embarrassed to show up if it is happening in your house. Show up and get the information. If we can have the information out there to everybody, the likelihood of having a positive outcome at the end of it is that much greater.
Right. And today's world of drug use, abuse, and addiction, the face of addiction doesn't look like it necessarily did 25 years ago. In today's day and age, anybody, especially with all the pharmaceuticals that are out there and all the exposure to all those drugs, it is likely scenario that anyone from any neighborhood can get hooked.
Absolutely.
And so, really think about that, is it can happen to you.
Yes.
It can happen to anybody. So again, if you want to contact the J team, please call the Sheriff's Department at 661-255-1121. If you want to contact the Way Out for any treatment options, interventions, prevention, or treatment, please call us at 296-4444. Thank you, Detective Velek, for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, this is the Way Out Recovery Hour. We'll see you next week.